Hello, my name is Jeannine Vegh, and I'm going to be introducing a series called Staying True to the Self in a Healthy Relationship to help couples to learn about what it takes to be in a really good relationship. It's more than just having good communication. And with me today in my first interview, we're going to be talking to Ellen Siegel about her and her husband, Gary. So Ellen, let's start out by you telling a little bit about your biography. Who are you and who is your husband? That's not on camera right now.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeannine. What a great series you're launching. I can't think of anything more valuable in our world today. And, you know, for couples who might even think they're having children, whether as aunts and uncles or having, you know, offspring, that anything they do to improve and have more awareness about their relationships is also going to have a great positive impact on our world. So I'm so glad you're doing this. So I'm Ellen Siegel, and my husband's name is Gary, and today I'm a social worker, and I have a private therapy practice and a life coaching practice, and I guess relationship coaching too. And I think the most challenging thing is to apply all those principles to oneself. So we work hard at that. I'll speak for myself. And my husband is retired. He was an insurance agent, and he's got many, many hobbies. He's always had hobbies in his life. So that makes for a healthy space between us, which I can talk about later.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today in regards to marriage. Now, you have been married for 5 decades, correct?
Yes, 5 decades, and with lots of ups and downs, and even some ins and outs, because we were divorced for 6 years, and during that time, maintaining our friendship and our work as co-parents of an independent child.
Yeah, and I think that was very exciting in an interesting, enlightened kind of way to hear you tell me that. And then when I talked to other couples that I was interviewing for doing this series, I found out that that was not unusual to have breakups or divorces, and then getting back together and remarrying a second time and staying married for a long time. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit of, tell our viewers a little bit about what your background is. Like, where did you guys come from and grow up, and how did you?
We grew up in a suburb outside of New York City, on Long Island, and it was like a post-World War II community. Both our fathers served in World War II and came back from the war and bought these newly built homes. And so those communities were from scratch, all young people with little children. So it was a particular environment that was very conducive to kids running around, playing in the street, lots of kids walking to school and things like that. And we both grew up in that neighborhood. Our parents were acquaintances. They belonged to different social groups, but some of those groups overlapped. So I knew of him and his family. Once in a while, his mother came over for tea in the afternoon with my mother when I was growing up.
Oh, so it was like a planned community.
It was like there were a lot of post-war communities that attracted GIs coming back from the war. They were cost effective, and there was a very promising uplifting attitude after World War II was over. And there was a lot of feeling about a new start, and just a lot of promise. So that was an energetic environment that I think was quite fertile to grow up.
Okay, so your mothers got together frequently, and now, so tell me, take me to this journey. How did you and Gary suddenly start dating?
Well, I don't want to take too much time, but each part of these stories, I mean, you know, I hope everyone could be fascinated by their own story, because when you look deeper into your story, it's really, it could be very interesting. So I encourage people to really look at themselves. Um, so let's see. There was a junior prom in the high school, and I told my father I'm not going because I'm not going. And my father said, "What? No daughter of mine is not going to the junior prom." I went, "Okay." So he gives me a list of boys. And he goes, "What about that Siegel boy?" And I said, "Nah, I don't think so." But later on, I invited Gary to a party that I had for a friend of mine.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then another year later, he asked me to a basketball game. And so it was sort of an organic kind of coming together.
Mhm.
And
So it wasn't love at first sight.
no, I can only speak for myself. Maybe he had that, but I don't know because he didn't talk much about how he felt. Uh, I will say this, though. My father passed away when I was 18.
I saw that.
Here's where my decision came, and I was dating a few fellas at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And so he was the one that held me for weeks when I was hysterical crying. And there was one point where I was in his arms. So I'm only 18. And no matter how old an 18-year-old feels, it's not very old. And I remember the moment thinking, oh my God, this is the person I want to be with in my life, based on loving how I felt in his arms.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's plenty other categories and checkoffs, and when you're choosing who you're going to be with for a short time or a long time, but in an 18-year-old grief-stricken mind, you know, it was really great, and he was a great choice.
It sounds like you sensed a level of authenticity there with him, and you were in a very vulnerable place. So you started your relationship in a crisis, in a sense. I mean, you had just lost the man, your father, who you respected very dearly, from what I can tell,
Oh, yeah.
you said so far. And then Gary steps in. He becomes more than just that neighborhood kid. He starts to become somebody that you're noticing something different about.
And actually, and we'll talk about this later, because I'm sort of an emotional intimacy junkie. And now that we're talking about this, I mean, how emotionally intimate was that?
Yes.
To be held that way.
It sounds
So
very beautiful, because empathy for someone that you love is one of the hallmarks of a really great relationship. Being able to turn to your partner and say something or do something, a behavior such as crying in front of them, and having them just hold you, whether it's literally or in a more of a spiritual way, that they're holding you and comforting you. I think that's a good early beginning, but it's also a good sign that this person really is a loyal person, somebody I can trust and respect.
yeah. And I will say that as the years went on and life got complex, I mean, I could tell you now, I totally lost sight of that intimacy. So it was conscious at the time, maybe not with the words intimacy, and later went unconscious or focusing on a million other things, that later on I was searching for that emotional intimacy with him and not experiencing it.
The same way as you originally did.
Yes, and had completely blocked out that I ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew we had, but
right.
The present as it moved forward became so large and predominant that whatever that even I knew intuitively what I'd had at the outset, what we shared actually. So anyway.
And that says a lot about how in marriages, your feelings come and go, that they change and evolve over time. And you forget things, but you probably went back and remembered again later on at some point when you reaffirmed your vows with each other.
Oh.
Now, the marriage, when you guys first got married, I know that the two of you were raised Jewish, so I imagine you had a traditional Jewish wedding the first time?
Yeah, it was actually was in the temple I grew up in. I grew up Reform. He grew up conservative, which is a little more focused on ritual. And nevertheless, we both had the same aversion to organized religion. We both felt forced in the early years to participate because, you know, your parents bring you up, you go along and everything. And so it was easy to get married by the rabbi who I loved. And, you know, but neither one of us, so it was there, but it wasn't the predominant factor. And I know for some couples, it's a wonderful umbrella where they're actually connect there. So, and our families, we were basically from the same socioeconomic, cultural fold, so to speak, even though there were differences.
Do you think that made it easier?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And yet I have no doubt that when two people, you know, with a different mindset, more open mindset, I'm going to say couples come together of varying races and cultural backgrounds and, you know, any manner of differences, and just find their way to their togetherness. And I could say despite those things, but those things might not be obstacles to many people. Yet we were brought up in a way that, you know, it would be an obstacle. So, and we both really liked our parents, and we had nice experiences growing up. So, you know, aside from feeling pressured to go to Sunday school and things like that, we weren't, neither one of us was rebellious against our parents' values or encouragements.
Yeah, so you had similar values that you both
so it was easy.
Respected. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I appreciate you bringing up the multicultural dimension as well, and how that can sometimes be an obstacle and sometimes not be an obstacle. It just depends on the situations. So let's talk about, do you want to talk about your son, or do you want to talk about issues that came up along the way? Which one do you think would be more pertinent?
Yeah, I think let's talk about issues first. Well, let me think. Okay, the context for the issues. So Gary and I really didn't have any issues like about money. We really had the same values. We were cost effective. We looked for the most value for the most reasonable amount of money. Neither one of us had big appetites for material things, although we both like nice things. You we both like to eat out, and we appreciated low-cost vacations and vacations. So we were never like, oh, I want to go here, or I want to go there, or I don't think we should do this. There was very little of that. And I want to say, and I'll just say these compatibilities that, I could say for people coming together, and I have some advice later, but look for where you have similarities. It might be easy to see where you're different, but really in staying true to yourself in a healthy relationship would be to really see who you are and then compare notes with the other person, who they are. And so here we knew Gary wanted to have a child, I didn't. When I wanted to have a child, he didn't. And that went on for like 12 years.
Oh my.
So we both knew not to go ahead, or not to lie, or not to manipulate. We both knew not to go ahead unless we both felt that at the same time. So we have this little laugh, and that is, there was 1 second where we both wanted to have a child, and in that second, our son was conceived. And then when we found out we were pregnant, we went, oh my God, what do we do? Can we do this? So that's the context. Okay. So the issues that, and we were like bizarrely in alignment about parenting also. In fact, to this day, and our son is 37, he'll get a call from me, and he's married, has a kid. He'll get a call from his father. And within an hour, Gary and I will have said the same thing to our son without comparing notes.
Oh, wow.
Either ask the same question or give the same nudge or whatever it is. So, and we only had 2 disagreements as parents. One was a basketball hoop that I wanted our son to have a basketball hoop, and Gary was afraid the basketball, because the uneven driveway, was going to break windows. And the other thing was our son wanted to take the drums. Mm-hmm. And I always wished I had a son that was a drummer. And Gary didn't want to get the drums. So those were the only 2 situations. But everything.
How was it resolved? Did you get the basketball hoop and the drums?
I became a bully in a kind way, and I said, we're getting the basketball hoop, and if we break windows, it's going to be more important that he have the experience. And the same thing about the drums. And Gary, sweet Gary, he went along. And yes, there was a broken window, but the truth was, he enjoyed the basketball with our son as much as our son did. And the drums, it was short-lived, but I got one duet out of it. I played the piano, and Lee came up behind me. He was playing the drums. That's the other thing about me. There are things that I want in life. If I just have one of it, I'm very satisfied. So the drums were short-lived. Anyway, blah, blah. So
yeah. So that's the only 2 challenges in raising your son, the disagreements, but otherwise you didn't disagree a lot. So
not at all, but I wanted to get back to the context of the question that you asked was, what challenge, or what, wasn't that the question? What
issues of concern between.
So here was the thing. We had no issues about practicalities and the running of our household. He was a great partner. We had fun together and all that. But what we didn't have was something I wanted very much, which was inner conversation. Like, how are you feeling? Tell me how you're feeling. What are you going through? Those kinds of things. And Gary didn't have access to that inside himself.
Yeah. He was able to hold you, but he wasn't able to talk for himself and share.
Yeah. And here I was, in this profession, of
Exactly.
helping people with their feelings and their behavior and how to get along and all of that. Yet for me, it was like a desert.
Mm.
And I saw it. One of the other questions was, being true to yourself and
Yes.
how do you take care of yourself? And so for me, I knew with my mind that it was unfair to be looking to Gary to satisfy
Satisfy yourself.
and emotional needs that maybe were left over from my childhood, or that I couldn't figure out how to nurture myself or feed that. Not that it's part of a healthy relationship to naturally support each other and very often meet each other's emotional needs without like racking your brain over it. The part that's a problem is when you're demanding that someone else be something that you need them to be when it's not in their wheelhouse. And so my level of maturity, how I would handle it differently today, I think I have more spiritual maturity, more emotional maturity. I was very demanding. I did it in a very kind way. And I came to a point where I told myself I couldn't go another day. So you also have to watch out. Now if I say to myself, oh, I can't do that, I challenge myself. It's like, what do you mean you can't do that? Find a way around that. There's nothing you can't do. Just get help. And yeah, we had help and all that, but it wasn't, I think a lot has to do with the maturity that I gained as time went on. And then he gained maturity also. So the best I could do after we went to counseling, and the counselor said, these two relating styles hardly ever make it together. So we left that counseling session united, like saying, what? Let's see, of course we can do what? Who would ever say such a thing? And that got us probably another 5 to 7 years in the relationship. But then it surfaced again, and I really didn't know what to do with it.
And by the time you guys divorced, and let's let's pause when we are talking about the what happened after the divorce. We'll kind of end there and then go on to the part 2 of this. So what how old was your son when you guys did get a divorce?
Our son was he was like 15, and it was in the 29th year. No, he couldn't have been 15. I'm trying to think. I think we got divorced in the 29th year of the marriage. So I don't know if he was a little younger than that.
Okay.
And or older. Somehow I think he was older. Thinking he was maybe, no, it was before he graduated high school. He might have been 16.
Okay. All right. So let's pause here, Ellen, and we'll get back to that in part 2.